Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical, like mine, or it can be psychological. You put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. He is currently a student at Cal State Fullerton, finishing up his master's degree in counseling. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. He's helped so many people already with his social media presence and his videos. He's already provided counseling for a lot of people.
I knew something serious had happened. I can't explain it, but I just got this feeling that something really bad just happened to me. And I go to try to get up, and I'm trying to move any muscle in my body, and nothing's working. So the thought goes through my head, oh my gosh, I just paralyzed myself. And then I'm thinking about the talk that my dad had with me right before he dropped me off. And I'm like, this cannot be happening. This is a dream. I start to realize this is not a dream. This is reality. And I'm going to die at 15. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah. I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and you know what I'm going to say because I say it all the time. I love getting to do this because I get to sit down and talk with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet. Today is no exception. But before I tell you who he is, let me thank you, those of you who listen for the first time. Hey, where you been? For those of you that listen all the time, hey, you know what to do. Like, share, leave a review, post it everywhere, help other people in the world hear these great stories. We recently made the milestone of 50 podcasts, and we're excited about that, and we're on our way to 100. Well, I guess today, I just saw something on social media about him, and there was a video that just caught my eye, and I'm like, you know what? Let me reach out to this guy and see if he'd be willing to come on the podcast. And he was like, absolutely. I was like, oh, wow, that was easy, because it's not that easy all the time. And so I'm excited. He is currently a student at Cal State Fullerton in beautiful, sunny California. I'm here in Wisconsin. At the time of this, the weather's good here, too. So I don't think we'll go back and forth about that today. He's finishing up his master's degree in counseling. And boy, what an appropriate degree. He's helped so many people already. And with his social media presence and his videos, that he's already provided counseling for a lot of people. And today we're going to talk about some of that and a few other things. So Zack Collie, welcome to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, you know, we both had something happen at age 15, which that was the first thing that attracted me to you. I was 15 years old, and I had a blood vessel erupt on my spinal cord. They call it a spinal aneurysm. And then that left me a wheelchair user for the last over 40 years now. People don't think that I'm that old, so I'm just going to say it's over 40. And when you were 15, you experienced something also that really has changed your life over these last, it's about 15 years now or so?
Yeah, so it happened. My accident happened back in 2010. So this past May 31st was my 12-year anniversary.
Mm. Wow. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your life before the accident, family, growing up, things you were involved in, and then we'll get to the accident itself. And more importantly, what you've done with your life over the last 12 years, because I think a lot of times people they see that you've got things that you're dealing with, but they also never really see all the things that you accomplish and get done. So tell us a little bit more about you and your family, and then we'll get into your accident.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've lived in Southern California my entire life. Grew up there. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. So I have three under me, 2 brothers. The youngest is my little sister. And my parents they're still married and together. So I had a really great childhood growing up. Very, very blessed and lucky just to have 2 amazing parents that really cared about their children. And I grew up going to church,
on Sundays. My mom and dad worked, and every summer we'd go on vacations together. That was something my mom really made an effort to do as a family, because when she was a child, she never went on vacations or anything. So I grew up, I had a great childhood, always very active. I was the typical older brother, so I always picked on my younger siblings, which I know I'm not the most proud of, but hey, as an older sibling, that happens.
Yeah, look, there's privilege to being number one.
Right.
So there you have it.
I had the advantage. I always picked on them. I was always going from one thing to the next. Grew up, riding dirt bikes, surfing, skateboarding, doing more so like the extreme activities. I never grew up playing kind of like the mainstream sports, basketball, baseball, football. Parents never watched sports or anything, so that wasn't really something I grew up with. But still a very energetic kid, always having to do something. My parents always like to joke with me. And for one of my birthdays, when I was probably, I'm just going to say some age under 10, they took me to Disneyland for my birthday. And halfway through the day, I guess I made a comment like, what are we doing after this? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, this is it, So I've always had that, mindset of like, okay, I'm doing something now, but what am I going to be doing next? And so, yeah, I had a good, pretty good childhood part,
Your life took a turn at age 15. Let's walk us through that event, and then I want to come back and begin to talk about your family and how instrumental they were or are to you in that, and the relationship you have with your siblings. And because what people don't understand is you're not the only person impacted by your injury.
Right. Yes.
It's everybody and everything around you that's in any close proximity, and a lot of times they don't get the attention that they need to help them get through these things.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention that I usually like to share when I talk about like my siblings and stuff is that my mom always makes the comment, and this is something I'm proud of, is that she knew when I was home, when I would get home from school, she knew it was me. And she always says I was more work by myself than all my younger 3 siblings put together. So, and I'm proud of that. But yeah, so, my story happened on May 31st, 2010. It was a Monday and Memorial Day. So I had the day off from school, and I remember being at home really bored, and my parents were going to a barbecue with a family friend, and I wasn't interested in that. And one of my best friends, childhood friends I grew up with, I was at his house every weekend, pretty much staying the night. He's my brother from another mother, so we were very close. And he called me that day and was like, "Hey, let's go to the beach." And so we're 15 years old, we don't have our license or permits yet, so we couldn't drive. And so I asked my parents, "Hey, would you drop me off at the beach?" And they were like, "No, definitely not," because especially it being a holiday, Memorial Day is extremely popular beach day. And so they already had plans. They didn't want to drive me down there, but I was the type of person that when I didn't get my way, I would bug you until you could let me have my way. And, so eventually they compromised, and we worked out the plan to where they would drop me off at my friend's house, and then his mom would take us to the beach and drop us off and then pick us up. So I was happy I got my way. And, it's really crazy, thinking back on that day. I forget a lot of details that happened, but I do remember on the way there, my dad was driving me to my friend's house, and he said, "Zach, I want you to be careful about diving and breaking your neck." And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I've heard it all before. I don't need you to remind me. And as I hopped out of the car to get to my friend's house, I had my back to him, and I was like, "Don't worry, Dad, I'll be fine." And close the door. And that was the end of that. So they go to the barbecue. My friend and I go to the beach. We get dropped off Newport Beach, 42nd Street, which is like in between 2 jetties. It's a popular spot. And so we were there all day. The weather was great. The sun was out. It was hot. The water was cold. And had a great time there. I met up with a few other friends. So we were like a small group. And the day was coming to an end. And so my friend's mom called him and was like, "Hey, I'm on my way to come pick you guys up. So be ready when we get there." And so in our heads, we had about 30 to 45 minutes before we had to leave. So we all decided, let's go in the water one last time. And my thought process was, I knew from being in the water earlier that day that the water was pretty cold. And I've always been taught, it's better just to submerge yourself in cold water right away than kind of just slowly walk in, just kind of rip off the Band-Aid, get used to it. And then you can have fun. So we stood up from the beach. I had my best friend to the right of me. We started running from the sand towards the water. My feet hit the water. I see a wave coming at me. And in my head, I'm like, I'm just going to dive into the wave and completely get underwater and get used to it. Something that I've done hundreds of times my entire life growing up, going to the beach every summer. And so what happened was, unfortunately, when I went to dive into the wave, there was a sandbar underneath it, which means there was, in the ocean, there's strong currents, and the currents pull sand. So there happened to be a hill of sand underneath the water that made it very shallow where I dove. So I dove into the wave head first, hit the sandbar with my head, and instantly broke my neck and got paralyzed. And I was still fully conscious the whole time. I remember everything. And so I hit instantly. My body went numb and tingly. I couldn't feel the temperature of the water. I had no pain in my body whatsoever. And the best way I could describe it is kind of like when your foot falls asleep and you get like kind of the pins and needle kind of feeling and the numbness. That's how I felt neck down. And so I remember thinking there, or laying face down in the water. I couldn't even turn my head out of the water to take a breath. And so after who knows how long, it felt like eternity, but it probably really wasn't that long. As soon as it happened, I knew something serious had happened. I can't explain it, but I just got this feeling that something really bad had just happened to me. And I go to try to get up, and I'm trying to move any muscle in my body, and nothing's working. So the thought goes through my head, oh my gosh, I just paralyzed myself. And then I'm thinking about the talk that my dad had with me right before he dropped me off. And I'm like, this cannot be happening. This is a dream, and I start to realize this is not a dream. This is reality. And I'm going to die at 15. And I thought that because growing up, I was a typical teenager. I always liked to push the limits. I was rebellious. If you told me not to do something, I would do it. If you told me I couldn't do something, I'd do it just so I could prove you wrong. That was like my mentality. And I always was a prankster. I like to have fun. So I thought that my friends would see my body floating face down in the water and just think that I was messing around with them. And by the time they realized something serious had happened, I would have been inhaled water and drowned. So that's kind of the thought that's going through my head. And the next thing I know, I said a little prayer because I couldn't believe that this was like my end. I was like, I'm 15 years old. I haven't even lived my life yet. I'm too young to die. Like, this can't be how I go, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. It was 100% out of my control. So I told myself, if I'm going to die, then I'm going to hold my breath for as long as I can. And the next thing I know, I get this weird sensation on my back. I felt like someone just kind of lightly poked me. And that was because of my lack of feeling. But I talked to my friend who was with me, after my whole injury happened. And he told me he saw my body floating face down, and he ran over to me and slapped me on my back with his hand really hard. And after he did that, my body had no reaction. There was no flinch, no response. Imagine smacking someone on the back, knowing, they're going to react. And there was nothing. It was like he was slapping a lifeless body. And he thought, okay, well, that's weird. And then he waited a little bit and then started to see my body float out with the tide. And then something in his head triggered him to say, okay, something's really wrong. So he ran over to me and flipped my body over. So then I'm staring face up directly into the sunlight. I can't see anything. I'm dead weight. My freshman year of high school, I was about 5'9", 5'10". I wrestled at 170 pounds. I was solid muscle. And my friend was probably like 5'7", 140 pounds, maybe. And I remember he grabs my arms and starts pulling me out of the water, kind of dragging me out. And once we got out of the water, my weight started playing a factor because he wasn't strong enough to pull me out of the water. And so I'm getting hit with waves and he's trying to pull me out. And thankfully he got me far enough out of the water to where we were safe. And I'll never forget this. I remember out of the corner of my eye, so my arms are above my head and he's dragging my body. And I can see out of the corner of my eye, my arms above my head. And once we got to a safe enough spot, he just let go of them. And I remember seeing them flop to the ground like they weren't a part of my body. Like these weren't my arms, but I see that they're attached to me. And they were so heavy. It felt like thousands of pounds. I couldn't move them. And I remember thinking like, what the heck? This is so weird. And by that time, the other group of friends that I was with had come out of the water. They kind of circled around me and were like, all right, Zach, this isn't funny. Like, stop joking. They thought I was still joking around. And when I dove into the water and I hit my head, I bit my tongue. So blood was coming out of my mouth. And when they saw that registered to them that something serious had happened. And so I couldn't talk or anything, I think because my body was in shock. But I just kept trying to say, I can't move. I can't move. I think I paralyzed myself. And so eventually they went over and got the lifeguard. He came over and was like, okay, don't move, which in my head, I'm like, well, I can't move anyways. Well, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. And so he went and called 911 and 911 came. And I remember laying there in the sand, like I'm wet. I got sand all over my body and they're trying to like keep the sun out of my eyes. And I hear the ambulance sirens in the background. And I remember it was the weirdest thought because I knew they were coming for me. And eventually they get there, they get a stretcher onto the beach. They put me in a neck brace. They lift me onto the stretcher, strap me down, put me in an ambulance, and off to the hospital I go.
But I thought about your dad. And then your friends there also. But you had a long road of recovery ahead of you. You had no idea
I had no idea the severity of a spinal cord injury. I thought, so I'm 15 years old. I'm a freshman in high school. I think I forgot to mention that. So I was a freshman in high school 2 weeks before my freshman semester ended. I'm 15. I think if you break your neck, you die. You don't live from that.
Right.
And so, I was rushed to the hospital. The next few days, I don't remember anything. I was informed by like my mom and my dad and my friends later on. So because I was underage, I was taken to the nearest hospital and it was on Memorial Day. So it was a holiday. There was no surgeons or doctors working. So I laid there with a broken neck for 3 days for two reasons. One, because there wasn't a doctor on that day. And then the next 2 days, they didn't want to do surgery on my neck until the swelling went down. Mm-hmm. So I had to wait for the swelling to go down. And after, they did an x-ray. My mom told me the story when they finally got to the hospital. So my friend was calling my parents. They weren't answering because they were at the barbecue. My mom randomly went to go check her phone and she sees a voice note from my friend. And all he says is like, Zach's been in an accident. He's at the hospital. You need to come here. So they get to the hospital. By the time they get there, the doctor said, I think they already did x-rays. And the doctor was like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is bad. You guys should probably sit down. And my mom's like, I'm not sitting down. Tell me right now. And so basically they told me that I completely shattered my C4 vertebrae and that I have spinal cord damage. And so then they eventually did the procedures. I had surgery on the front of my neck where they fused my vertebrae. And then they also cut open the back of my neck where they had to pull out the broken pieces of bone. I completely shattered my C4 vertebrae. So the fact that, those broken bones never severed or cut my spinal cord is a miracle in itself.
I was going to say, when you said shattered and it didn't sever your cord, that is truly.
Yeah. So the doctors describe my spinal cord as like, kind of like a bent straw. When you have a straw in a drink and it's bent, it's kinked, you can still get liquid through it, but it doesn't flow as great,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how like my spinal cord is. And now 12 years later, I understand the seriousness of everything. I'm so grateful that, I wasn't paralyzed more because of just being handled improperly, or that the doctor's making a mistake, whatever could have gone wrong. So they had to completely cut open the back of my neck, pull out all my C4 vertebrae, and replace it with a dead person's donor bone. So surgery went great. They were able to remove everything. They said the bone that they put to replace fit perfectly. I woke up out of surgery. I had a huge tube down my throat. I couldn't talk. And I woke up trying to get this tube out of my throat. And, the nurses called the doctors in, and they're like, Zach, stop trying to push us out. This is what's helping you breathe. And they're like, so I had to communicate through blinking. So 2 blinks was yes, 1 blink was no. And so he's asking me questions and I'm blinking, and he's like, do you want me to take the tube out of your throat? And I blinked twice for yes. And he's like, okay, if I take out this tube and you can't breathe on your own, I'm going to have to put it back in you while you're awake, and it's going to suck. Do you still want me to take it out? And I blinked twice.
You blinked twice?
I blinked twice. I'm like, yes, I don't care. Get this thing out of my mouth. And I remember him pulling this tube out that is it felt like it was never going to end. This tube was so long, and it was making me gag. And I finally gets pulled out, and they put the little oxygen under my nose to help with me breathing, because they were unsure, because C4 is a pretty high level to break, and C4, C3, they control your respiratory.
Yes.
So they didn't know if I would be able to breathe on my own. And thankfully, I was able to breathe. After that, I was then transferred to a rehabilitational center for spinal cord injuries and brain injuries, where I basically learned to live my new life wheelchair bound for 3 months. And after that, they kicked me out, and I went back home to my house and had to figure everything else out on my own.
They kicked you out. I got a feeling that that's probably an accurate assessment, knowing you were like, look.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know why, if it was an insurance thing or if it was they only have you for a certain amount of time, but I was there for 8 weeks, and then actually maybe a little long. I was there probably longer. I think more 3 months ish. And after that, yeah, they're like, we're discharging you in a week. And then, thankfully, my parents' house is a single story. They had just remodeled the floor, which used to be carpet, to hardwood and tile. And my dad's in construction, and my grandpa's an architect. So they put in a roll-in, not a roll-in. They built in a ramp in our back slider door to our house, so I could roll around the side of the house, get inside. And all we really had to do was widen doorways, and then my grandpa designed a roll-in shower for me. So those were the 3 main modifications: was a roll-in shower, widen doorways, and a ramp for me to get inside. But other than that, thankfully our house accommodated the rest.
We're going to take a break in a moment, but before that, because I don't even know what I want to talk about now after all of that. There's so much, and the detail. Yeah, the detail is amazing. And I think that the thing that probably stood out to me the most in all of this, I remember being 15. And when you're 15 and you have something happen to you, you're pretty sure you're going to get back to normal. Your mindset is look, I got this. I understand. The girls are at school. I need to get back, do my thing. And to a point, that does help you, because that drives you mentally and doesn't allow for you to get into that lower place of real depression. You're struggling and you're trying to figure some things out, but you're also seeing down the road, I got this. Was that part of what I know that was for me, was part of what I experienced. Was that similar to you at all?
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that, because I just thought of a few more things I want to say. Yes. So I remember, I don't remember this in detail, but it was right when I woke up out of surgery. The doctors came in and were like, okay, Zach, this is what happened to you. You had a spinal cord injury, and, this is most likely going to be something you'll be dealing with for the rest of your life. They gave me the whole thing, you're probably never going to walk again. And so I remember thinking in my head, okay, whatever, I'll be out of here in a few months. And because, that happened in May, and in July, I had plane tickets to go fly out to one of my best friend's houses in New Mexico during my summer vacation, and I was going to stay there. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, this sucks, but I'll be okay by the time I go to my friend's house. So fast forward, those months, and it comes around, and I'm still paralyzed. I'm not even that much better at all.
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to postpone this. I'll come back, fly out later this year. Then another few months go by, and it slowly started to settle in for me that, okay, this is really serious, and this is something that I'm going to be dealing with for a while. Because I was so young and kind of naive, I didn't realize the severity of a spinal cord injury.
Mm-hmm.
But I also was like very tough-minded and was like, okay, whatever, tell me what I need to do and I'm going to do it. And for those of you listening and don't know what a quadriplegic is, so I was diagnosed as a quadriplegic. When it comes to spinal cord injuries, for the most part, there's two different spinal cord injuries: a paraplegic and a quadriplegic. I'm not going to get into details with both of them, but for the most part, a paraplegic, you're paralyzed waist down, so you still have upper body. Quadriplegic, technically, you have paralysis in all four limbs. So when I was in the hospital, I couldn't move anything below my neck. I couldn't lift my arm to my face to itch it. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't get my own water. And so I had to have everyone do that stuff for me. I was 100% dependent on another person for my survival. And I think that was the hardest part for me being 15 years old, is I was such an independent person growing up. My parents used to always joke, Zach, the day of your 18th birthday, you're going to have your bags packed by the front door, ready to move out. And so being independent, 1 second later being paralyzed, and then all of a sudden having to rely on help for everything. And, like I'm talking showering, I couldn't shower myself. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't clean myself. Very personal things that I could no longer do. I had to have my parents see me naked at 15 years old.
Right.
I felt like I had all my manhood, all my dignity taken away from me at 15 years old. And it sucked. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I'm a very positive person. I always, I don't complain about things, but it freaking sucked.
The whole thing about independence, for those who don't get it, there is nothing like it. There's nothing like being independent. I can't. Yeah. I wish I could describe it another way, right, Zach? I mean, it's like that's the thing you want the most. You want to be able to and like we have different situations, but I had to learn how to get in and out the bed and out the car, out the shower, all those things with assistance and everything. And it can be dehumanizing in a sense where you're like, I got to get help with everything. Like, what the heck is that? And that really sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's thankfully for you, your family, man, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk about your family.
Yeah.
Because you haven't said it directly, but I'm listening to what you said. They were there. And I know they still are. And we're going to talk about the importance. We talk about perspective, perseverance, and partnerships on this podcast. And I believe that everybody needs them on their road from paralysis to purpose. And we define paralysis as anything that keeps you from operating at your maximum self, whatever that might be. But you're going to have to see right. You're going to have to be able to not quit, and you need some help along the way to get to a place of purpose. So we'll hit that in the second half of the podcast, because this first half, you told your story. You told the event. I want to come back, and I want us to go from rehab to Cal State Fullerton. Stay where you are. We're going to be right back with Zack Collie here on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, with our guest, Zack Collie, today. Look, you may want to go back and re-listen to that first part of this podcast. His story is amazing. He is an excellent storyteller in my mind. I was captivated. I'm supposed to be asking questions and stuff, and I'm sitting there like just listening. So go back and check it out. I want to talk now in this part of the podcast, and we'll touch on family and a bunch of stuff. Your journey from rehab to Cal State Fullerton. Now you're 12 years later after your accident. You just turned 28 years old, and there I'm sure was some ups and downs along that way. But I want to start first with your experience in rehab. I want you, if you can, to tell me when did you probably know how hard you were going to have to work to be in the position you're in now?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I feel like that thought I probably realized once I was in rehab. Once I was out of the hospital, out of ICU, I was in rehab where I was there for 3 months, and I had my own hospital bed. I had nurses come in, and once I didn't take a shower for a month, like 27 days after my injury. So once I was finally in rehab is when I took my first shower ever. And, they transferred me through like this device called a Hoyer sling, a Hoyer lift. Back to your question, I have an answer, but it's pretty extreme and it's raw. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because this is the reality of my life and other lives of people with spinal cord injuries. I think when it truly set in for me was when I had to have my parents see me naked, shower me, help me wipe my butt after I went to the bathroom, and shave. Mm-hmm. When I had to experience that for the first time, because there's no teenager would ever want that or be okay with that if they didn't have to absolutely do that, right? So for me, it was one of the hardest things I have ever gone through. And I had to accept that. It was something that was completely out of my control. I was extremely embarrassed. It was degrading, zero privacy. But what other choice did I have, really? So I think, when I went, I still remember being like transferred over to a toilet, doing bowel program, having to have someone wipe your butt after you poop. Like how, that's so crazy, and I remember sitting on the toilet and just being like, this is just so horrible. I hate this. But what else am I going to do? And so after experiencing that, and then going to PT and like having to learn how to sit back up, I would sit up and like my blood pressure would drop and I feel like I'm going to pass out. And I'm like, 3 weeks ago, I was freaking wrestling in the wrestling room for 2 hours, sweating like crazy and doing that. And now I can't even sit up for more than 15 minutes. So not little things, but like those things that are happening, I'm just like, okay, this is really freaking serious.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you say, that they sound like they're little things until you don't have them.
Right.
It's all those things that you take for granted that like literally, and I don't condemn people for not getting it because until you're in our situation, I didn't think much about it either.
Me neither. And I don't think it's something you could ever even fully understand or grasp unless you really have a spinal cord injury.
Yeah.
And the best that we can do for able-bodied people is just explain it.
That's it. I mean, and ask the people to listen and then believe us. Just believe what we're telling you is true. And if we tell you, I'm going to need an extra 30 minutes to get ready, just give us the 30 minutes, right? Yeah. Just don't ask no questions. Just, okay, you got 30 minutes. Let us know.
I always like to tell people, next time you have an itch on your body, see how long you can go without itching it.
Yes.
Because
or scratching it.
When I was paralyzed, scratching it, yeah. I had itch on my face. I couldn't itch it. And I either have to just deal with it or I have to have someone help me itch my face. Tell them where to go. Up, down, left, right, itch harder. Okay, I'm good, thanks. If you thought that you take being able to itch yourself for granted. Scratch yourself, so.
Yeah. So, let's talk about your family just for a moment, because you did talk about your mom and dad. And let me tell you, I was grateful, for my mom and dad. I'm the second oldest, so I've got one older and two younger, and so same family. Went to church, all that kind of stuff. Our house was not very accessible. We lived in an old house in the city of Milwaukee, but my parents did everything that they could to make it as accessible for me as possible. Mm-hmm. And to this day, when I speak and do other things, I always talk about the sacrifices that my family had to make in order for me to get to where I am today. I would like for you to talk about your family just for a moment, because I think sometimes people don't understand that it takes a toll on your family, and they don't get to really grieve and mourn the way they probably need to, because they're trying to put themselves in a position to help their loved one be all that they can be. Could you just talk about the family and the sacrifice and the love they had to show you?
Yeah. And this is something that I absolutely took for granted early on in my injury. But I have to say, I would not be where I am today if it was not for my family. My family has been supportive of me since day one of my injury. And, when I was injured, that was like the last thought in my mind was like, how is this affecting them as well? All I was like thinking about was me, like I'm paralyzed. I need help with this stuff, and it took an absolute toll on my parents and my younger siblings. So like I said, I'm the oldest of four, so I have three younger siblings. So I was 15 at the time. So my next younger brother would have been 13. After that would have been like 8 years old. And then after that, my little sister was probably 6. So, and they never said anything out loud to me. But they definitely negatively suffered because of my spinal cord injury. They didn't get as much attention shown to them, as they should have gotten. Pretty much all my parents' focus on was me 90% of the time. My mom was also took over as my primary caregiver. And, that takes a toll on anyone. My parents almost divorced because of the stress of this injury, as well as trying to stay together as a couple, as well as income providing, and then also having my younger siblings to take care of,
the financial impact is, I look back and I'm a little bit older than you, and I'm like, how did they do this?
Yeah.
How did they, I'm 15, my brother's 17, my younger sister is 13, and then my youngest sister is like 3 or something. I forget, she was younger. I mean 4. And we were all in private schools and blah, 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 blah. How did they do this? I don't even know. I've never asked them, and my dad has passed now. My mom's still living, but I'm indebted to them.
Yeah.
Because it was crazy. So you kind of have that same feeling as you look back at it. But they stayed together. Like, they never argued in front of us, but I could just see this taking a toll on my mom and dad's relationship between the two of them. They started to like resent each other, and I could just see it. And I was like, I don't know how much longer this is going to last. We even had a family conversation about what would happen if that happened. Like, it got that serious. And it was like terrifying to me because I felt responsible. Because I knew like if my spinal cord injury never happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But then of course they're like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but it's kind of is. Yes. Right. So, yeah. That was terrifying. And thankfully, I'm so grateful that, they were able to overcome it and stick together. And one thing that I didn't mention, you could probably get it from how I talked about being the older brother, but I didn't have a good relationship with my siblings and my parents before my injury. Like I said, I wasn't a bad kid. Like, I don't think I would have ended up in jail, but like, I was very defiant and I like to push the envelope. And so because of that, I didn't have the best relationship with my siblings or my parents. After my injury, it forced us to be close together. And through that, it actually strengthened a lot of our relationship. Like, I'm so close with my mom and dad and my siblings. And I couldn't imagine like not being as close
with them now. Like I can't imagine not being like that. Like it makes me sad to see like other friends in sibling rivalry that's super extreme, that they just cut each other out of their lives, or they don't share with each other things that they're struggling with. Like it makes me sad because that's probably how I would have been had my injury not happened. But now the relationship I have with them now, I'm so grateful for it.
Did during this process at all, was there any therapy or therapist that helped you guys, or did you guys just kind of band together and walk through this?
Yeah, so I did do a physical therapy. There was this place out in Oceanside. It was called Project Walk. And it was about 2.5 hour drive from where I lived. And, you know, when I remember the doctor was like, hey, PT is extremely important the first year after your injury. The first year after your injury, quote, you're supposedly supposed to get the most function back you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So every doctor tells anyone with a spinal cord injury, do as much physical therapy you can the first year. Fast forward now, I don't completely agree with that. I still think you can get function back 5-10 years later. But the main thing they're probably trying to say is do physical therapy. So the first year, honestly, 2 years of my injury, I worked out 3 to 4 days a week for 3 hours at a time, driving 2.5 hours each way to Project Walk every week at the same time while my mom had my younger siblings in school. And we would get up in the morning, she'd get me dressed. At one point, there was 3 different kids at 3 different schools. She would drop them off, drive me all the way out to Oceanside. I'd work out for 3 hours. We'd eat lunch, drive 2.5 hours home, pick up my siblings from school, and then go back home. And then she would have to cook dinner and help them with homework. I have no idea how she did it.
The things that families do in these situations that we're telling the world about, that people have no idea. Life doesn't just go on. Your life is disrupted, and you're recalibrating everything while trying to keep some normalcy for everybody else in an abnormal situation, which is really hard. You've mentioned grateful a number of times during this interview so far. Mm-hmm. I want you to, if you would, why is gratitude so important?
So this is going to sound insane to say, but my spinal cord injury gave my life purpose and meaning. Mm-hmm. And before my injury, and I know I was only 15, so it's not like I wasn't like an adult working. Like I didn't have a career yet. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I wasn't paying a mortgage or anything. And so I've always been the type of person that I don't think super far ahead in life, because especially now after breaking my neck, now I'm like, well, anything can freaking happen. So to me, it's like, I don't know. I don't stress about where I'm going to be in 10 years because I'll figure that out when I need to. But yeah, so pre-injury, Zach, I never planned on going to college. I never was an academic student. I would have graduated from high school, got my diploma, and then would have just started working. But breaking my neck gave me a new path. I ended up after my senior year of high school, I decided to go to college and threw all my eggs in one basket, applied to Cal State Fullerton. Senior year of high school, I took like 6 or 7 classes because prior to that, I opted not to take any prerequisites for a college because I didn't plan on going. So my senior year, I had to take a bunch of extra classes. Thankfully, got accepted to Cal State Fullerton, got my bachelor's in human services, graduated with that in 2018. Then kind of felt still like, okay, I have this college degree now, but I still don't know what I want to do with my life. I still felt like something was missing. And I always knew after my injury that I wanted to help other people. Whatever I did in life, I wanted to give back and help others, but I didn't know how I could do that being paralyzed. And so thankfully, my undergrad, I took this class during one summer, a summer class. It was called Character and Conflict, and it completely changed my life. And it was run by part-time professors and also part-time licensed therapists. And this class, they even said on the course curriculum, this is going to be probably one of the most challenging classes that you will take, but you will come out of it a new person. And so each week, we talk about a different topic: death and loss, sex and love, meaning of life, whatever. And we would each have to like open up and talk about personal stuff in our life. And I remember being in that class and being like, I feel so comfortable. Like it was hard, but I'm an open book. So I thrived. I loved it. And then just randomly a light bulb went on my head and I was like, therapy. I still have my brain and I still have my voice. I could do that. I could do that as a career to support myself, which is something I needed. And I can give back and help people. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do. So then I started looking up counseling programs, had no idea that Cal State Fullerton has a master's in counseling program, let alone they're known for this program specifically. People come from all over the United States and from other countries to come to this counseling program. I had no idea. And so when I was reading about applications and stuff, they were like, yeah, we get about 400 plus applications a year, and we only accept 65 to 70. So you had to have a certain GPA, you had to have 3 written letters of recommendation, and you had to have a personal statement. Right away, I was like, I don't have the grades for that. So I need a kick-ass personal statement, and I need 3 really good written letters of recommendation. Again, threw all my eggs in one basket, and I was like, God, if this is where I'm supposed to go, if this is what I'm supposed to do, which it feels like, then you're going to make it work. If it doesn't happen, then I'll figure it out. And lo and behold, I got accepted. I had that summer off. That fall, after I graduated in the spring, started my first semester of my master's program and haven't looked back since. I just started, yesterday was my first week of my last final semester. So now I'm in my final semester. I'm about to graduate in December. I'll be done with my master's, and just the growth that I've had just from being in this program for the last 3.5 years, I've grown so much. It's wild. So,
well, the thing you said, because we started off talking about gratitude, and the thing that you said in your response was you still had your mind and you still had your voice. And you said, I can use that to help somebody else. Now, just what a paradigm shift, what a perspective shift from early on when it was about you. Because it had to be about you. Look, It had to be about you. That's not a bad thing. But something happens when it is no longer about you. And it changes who you are. And it allows for you to grow, like you said, you begin to grow exponentially, like in ways that you probably never anticipated. When you finally find that thing that you think you were put on earth to do, the amount of pressure and everything and the release is amazing. And you were like, if this isn't the right one, I'm good and I'll get it over here because I know this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. And I will say, I think one of the things I'm most grateful for is I can honestly just like look back at my life now and say that I believe I've accomplished more in my life at 28 than I would have in my entire previous life had it never happened. So I'm grateful just for the person my injury has shaped me into, because I'm not the same Zack I was. I mean, I am the same Zack, but I've grown and matured way more than I would have my entire life previously. Wow. And I'm able to acknowledge that. And I'm grateful for that because I never thought this is the Zack I would end up being.
It's crazy because you didn't think you'd be the person you are. I look back over my life and I never thought I would have accomplished the things I've been able to accomplish up to this point. If you told me at 15, laying in a rehab center, that, I'd coach basketball and travel and do all these things, I'd have been like, seriously?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how to get on the toilet and off the toilet. That's just what I'm trying to do. And so you're beginning that journey. And I think it's fantastic that you kind of found your place a little bit. I want to also, we talked about independence. We talked about your family. Now we talked about purpose for you, because I do believe that everyone's purpose involves serving others. If you're not doing that, I don't think that you're really in your purpose, because purpose is always bigger than you and designed for other people. Let's talk about love, because I saw one of your videos, and I remember when I went into rehab at age 15. As much as you can have a girlfriend at age 15, I did, and I remember getting a call while in rehab saying that, I can't see you anymore because this is too much for me to take.
Yeah.
That hurt a lot. I was like, I was like, seriously? And that was kind of like a wake up, like, man, I guess I am a little bit different or whatever. You went through that same kind of scenario a little bit later in your journey. How has your injury impacted your ability to date and dream and that type of stuff?
Yeah, no. So I would say I don't even think I put myself out there to date until like 5 years post injury, because I was just so insecure. The rest of my high school experience, I never asked a girl out because at 15, 16 years old, my thought process was like, why would any woman want to be with a guy in a wheelchair? I don't feel like a man because I can't even wipe my own ass. I can't open a door for a girl. I can't physically protect her. Why would anyone want to be with me? So didn't do anything with girls in high school. Didn't go to any dances. Didn't go to prom. And then it really wasn't until when I went to college that those feelings started to like lift off my shoulders, but they were still there. Because I never had. I had guy friends, and I would visually see women be interested in them, and go up and talk to them. I'd see them flirting. That never happened with me, so that just kind of reinforced my own insecure thoughts that women just aren't interested in someone with a spinal cord injury, which now I know it's not true. There's plenty of people with spinal cord injuries who are happily married. However, I will say that it really does take a truly special kind of woman to be able to look past everything that comes with living with a spinal cord injury. It's not easy. It's possible, but it's like, honestly, today's dating is already complicated and freaking ridiculous enough. Then
Right.
let's add a spinal cord injury, and then let's cut already that, in half, so with women that would be interested in dating an able-bodied person, let alone the type of women that would be interested or open to dating someone in a wheelchair is like probably less than 10%. So I don't know.
Yeah,
But it's hard. It's really hard. And especially with the spinal cord injury, like I struggle a lot with loneliness, even though I'm surrounded by a great support system.
it takes a special person, first of all, even your fellas, to hang out and understand all that you got to do and all that you go through. Just you start there, and then once you start talking about romance and love, I mean, and I guess our point in our conversation today is that there is no area of your life that is untouched by the spinal cord injury. There's just you can't find it. I don't know. Everything is impacted down to that.
Yeah.
So what's in your future?
So my number one priority right now is to finish my last semester of my master's. That is number one. Just because that's my future. I plan on after I graduate, I plan on applying to become an associate and start getting my hours. I have to get 3,000 hours, and also take a state board test. And then I eventually would like to become a licensed therapist. I really see myself working with either people with disabilities because I can relate to that. And I remember being in rehab and like not having anyone to talk to. I had all these questions, and all I had was my parents or my doctor. And, I didn't want to talk to my parents about sex, didn't really want to talk to my doctor about that either. And so, and then I had a bunch of other questions too about a whole bunch of different things. And so I remember thinking like, this is wild that I don't have anyone to talk to. And like, I want to be that person for someone else.
Sure.
So either working with a population with or not only spinal cord injuries, but any type of disability. I would love to work in like a correctional facility. I would love to work with veterans or people who have gone through any type of traumatic experience, survivors of violent crimes. for me, it's got to be something intense just because of what I've gone through and what I've experienced. I feel like I'd be a great therapist for people that have gone through those types of things rather than people who are struggling with a breakup, getting fired from a job, anxiety, depression, etc. Because those are still all real and valid. But for me, I want something that's intense that the average person may not be able to handle.
Well, you know what? Your personality and your wiring has not changed because of your paralysis. You have developed as a person, but that same edgy, raw, on the edge, that's still a part of you. And now you're learning how to take that and use it to benefit other people. I say this and a lot, and my purpose and my passion did not become paralyzed when my legs did, and neither did yours. And it's up to us to figure out what that is and walk that path out so that we can be the best persons that we can be in the middle of the struggle, in the middle of the battle, because every day you and I have to deal with the reality of where we are and who we are.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle sometimes, but right. I mean, it's really
every day.
Every day.
Injury, every day you're facing adversity at some point or another. Every day is a choice to wake up and move forward with your life.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Well, I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give you the last word after I ask you what I ask all of our guests. And we could really talk for a long time, but we can't. We can't. We always talk about the importance of perspective, perseverance, and partnerships.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you, how important is perspective?
I think it's everything. Man, perspective and your attitude is something I absolutely took for granted until I broke my neck. And I realized all that little stupid crap that I was stressing about or I thought was so big was absolutely tiny. My perspective absolutely changed after my injury. I feel like my eyes opened up to see things differently than how I viewed them before. And that's because of my injury. And so I think having a perspective or having a different perspective on life and believing and wanting to do something bigger than yourself. Like you mentioned that. And for me, it's like, I can't imagine doing something with my life that wouldn't be bigger than myself. Like, I don't even care about myself anymore. Like, as long as I'm doing something that is helping other people, I don't really care what happens to me, to be honest. Like, I've just grown so passionate about just wanting to help people get through whatever they may be struggling through. Because, man, I was not always as positive in the beginning, but I realized how far a positive attitude and a positive mindset and perspective will bring you in life.
Wow. When you hear perseverance, how important is perseverance?
Man, that's my word. I got it tattooed on my body. I love perseverance. And to me, that just means to never give up. And that's something that this injury has taught me. I look back at like my life before my injury and all like the stuff I did that I started and quit before I finished, or I gave up because I didn't want to, or I gave up because it was too hard. I'm like, I get mad at myself now because I'm like, dude, are you serious? To me, that's like my life motto. Just to never, I got two options. I can give up and feel sorry for myself and quit, or I can fight and move forward and make something with my life. That's how I view it. It's A or B. And to me, it's easy. And I choose to fight and make something of my life.
Wow. I didn't know perseverance was tattooed on you.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's my word. And, it's even in the Bible, God talks about how suffering produces perseverance. Mm-hmm. And that's been such a model for me. And I struggled a lot, growing up in the church. And I'm like, God, like, why did you let this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why haven't you healed me? I've prayed and asked for healing. I've even compromised. Like, okay, like I don't care if I walk again, just give me use of my hands, like something, or bowel and bladder control. Like, even if I had that, my life would be so much easier. But again, I would not be who I am today if I've not gone through all the suffering and hardships that I've been through. And I'm grateful because I've fallen in love, and I'm so grateful for the person I've become and the doors that I've opened through this injury that I can't imagine like my life not doing this now. It's wild. But yeah, suffering grows. And if you never suffer, you don't grow. And then if you never grow, then what's the point of life?
If you don't grow, you die. How about that? How about that?
Yeah, you don't grow, you die.
Lastly, the importance of partnerships.
Yeah, partnerships. You mean like family and community kind of?
Whatever. It can be, I won't define it for you. You tell me how partnerships have been a part of your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every human being on earth strives to want to connect with someone else. Like, that's ingrained in us no matter what. And, I'm grateful that I have a very supportive family. I'm grateful that I've had supportive friends. This injury showed me who my real friends were and who my fake friends were, which hurt in the beginning, but it's something I'm also grateful for, because I'd rather have 5 very close friends that are true friends than 20 friends that are not truly my friend, or they're fake friends. And yeah, partnership, I think it's extremely important. I pray that, God will put a woman in my life, because aside from wanting to be a therapist and helping other people, I want nothing more than also to be a husband and also a father. I want to have kids and stuff. So I'm waiting for that right time and that right woman to come along. But just being patient, patience. Also, that's probably one of the top things this injury has taught me, is I was so impatient before my injury, and I was forced to learn patience. That's also helped me so much in my life, is controlling my emotions and biting my tongue and just waiting, and not reacting in the moment if something triggers me, but to think about that for a little bit, settle my thoughts, and then respond. Living in the moment, not getting stuck in the past or stressing about the future. Yeah, I would like to end because with this, because I've been very kind of obsessed with the whole idea of like suffering. And I know I've talked briefly about it, but everyone suffers in life, and suffering sucks. No one really likes to suffer, but growth will always come from suffering, and suffering's temporary. It's not permanent. And suffering it's taught me so much. And I used to view it negatively, but once I changed my perspective, changed my thinking, instead of like, why is this happening to me? Why did this happen to me? Now I'm like, okay, what can I learn from this? What can this teach me? And that's made me be able to just live in a body that no longer works anymore, and deal with that everyday suffering, the everyday adversity, because I know that it's temporary and it's making me into a better person, and I'm going to be able to have an impact on other people's lives because of my attitude.
Wow. What a great way to end the podcast. I'm with you 100%. 99% of things in life are temporary, and you don't need to get bent out of shape over them, because this too shall pass, and you'll be okay on the other side. On the other side, you'll be okay. And it is a journey getting from there to there, and it's okay to have ups and downs and get frustrations and have bad days, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Live all of the experience, and learn from it all. Well, Zack, if people want to follow you on social media or to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say if you're interested, I have my own YouTube channel. I have a bunch of videos I've posted over the years of just, my daily life living, how I do certain things. I also post cool videos of me cooking. I've done adaptive gaming. I've done adaptive surfing. I've gone skydiving after my injury. And so I like to post just cool kind of like daily life videos. So my YouTube channel is my name. It's Zack Collie. If you want to look it up on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. If you want to look at my Instagram, it's Zack Collie 7. If you want to give me a follow. But yeah, I mean, I'm mainly just on like Instagram. That's kind of like my social media of choice. But definitely, if you're interested in just checking out some cool stuff, I would recommend checking out my YouTube channel.
I checked it out, people, and it's really good. I mean, I was telling him, we didn't have social media when I was 15, and I'm not sure I would have had the guts to be as transparent as he has been on his videos. Well, boy, I was like, wow, they're really good. So make sure you check it out. Well, Zack, thank you for your time. I mean, this has been great. I'm so glad that I just said, let me reach out and see if I can get this guy on the podcast, because sometimes I get people, sometimes I don't. And I never know how it's going to be. And I don't know if you have a blue check mark by your name yet, but you will.
I don't have that yet. That would be awesome to check mark that box one day.
Yeah, you will. Just continue to do what you do. So until next time on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, this is David Cooks reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
So here you have Darnella Frazier, who did not ask to be in that situation. She was present and she refused to leave out of love for this Black man. She recorded a man dying in front of her. She had the resiliency to record, the presence of mind, the steady hand even to record and document, and then use her platform to project, to broadcast to the rest of the world.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
I am so excited to have Phil Allen Jr. here with us.
That altered the consciousness of a lot of people. That's the energizing piece. And now it's our job to sustain the energy.
Paralysis to purpose.